Why do you keep waiting to feel ready while your life quietly passes by?
How much longer are you going to keep wasting years of your life? Not because you don't care, not because you don't dream, but because you keep waiting to feel ready. Ready to start, ready to change, ready to take the risk, ready to become someone different. And while you wait, life quietly continues moving. Days become routines. Routines become years. You tell yourself the right moment will eventually arrive, that one day you'll finally feel confident enough. But deep down, something already feels wrong, because part of you knows that readiness never seems to come, no matter how much you think, no matter how much you prepare. And the longer you stay in that waiting state, the more normal postponing your life begins to feel.
Most people believe they need certainty before taking action, but certainty is rarely available before change happens. That's the trap. You keep expecting clarity, confidence, motivation, or emotional security to appear first, as if action should only happen after fear disappears. But psychologically, that's almost never how growth works. Confidence is usually built after movement begins, not before. Yet many people spend years trying to emotionally prepare for experiences they can only understand by actually living them. So instead of moving, they stay mentally rehearsing life, thinking about possibilities, imagining outcomes, planning endlessly. And because thinking feels productive, they don't immediately notice the time being lost. But hesitation has a silent cost. Every year spent waiting reinforces the belief that you are still not ready. And eventually, that belief becomes part of your identity.
Waiting can feel responsible, mature, careful, strategic. But sometimes waiting is simply fear wearing a more acceptable disguise. Fear of uncertainty, fear of embarrassment, fear of making the wrong decision. And because those fears are uncomfortable, the mind searches for reasons to postpone action. I need more time. I need to improve first. I'll do it when life calms down. But life rarely becomes perfectly stable. There is almost always another excuse available, another delay, another condition that still doesn't feel ideal. And over time, people stop realizing they are no longer preparing for life. They are avoiding it. Not dramatically, quietly, one postponed decision at a time.
The dangerous part is that waiting slowly changes your relationship with time. At first, postponing feels temporary, but eventually, delay becomes routine, and routine creates emotional comfort, even if that comfort quietly makes you unhappy. You adapt to unfinished goals, unmade decisions, unlived versions of yourself. And because nothing visibly collapses immediately, the mind assumes there is still plenty of time left. But psychological stagnation rarely feels dramatic while it's happening. It feels ordinary. That's why people suddenly wake up years later wondering where their energy, ambition, or sense of direction went. Not because they failed overnight, but because hesitation accumulated slowly over time. And the most painful realization is often this: you were never actually waiting for the right moment. You were waiting to stop feeling uncomfortable.
The truth is that meaningful decisions almost always involve discomfort, especially in the beginning. There is uncertainty in changing careers, uncertainty in ending relationships, uncertainty in becoming someone unfamiliar to yourself. And the brain naturally resists unfamiliar situations because familiar discomfort still feels safer than unknown outcomes. So people remain emotionally attached to situations they already know are limiting them, not because they enjoy suffering, but because suffering they understand feels easier to control. That's why readiness becomes such a dangerous illusion. You keep expecting emotional certainty before acting, but emotional certainty is often created by action itself. The first step usually feels unstable, awkward, uncomfortable, and that discomfort is not evidence that you shouldn't move. Sometimes it's evidence that your life is finally starting to move again.
Many people lose years, not because they made bad decisions, but because they avoided making decisions at all. And avoidance creates a strange kind of exhaustion. You remain mentally connected to goals you never pursue, to conversations you never have, to changes you never allow yourself to begin. So part of your energy stays trapped in unfinished possibilities. That's why prolonged hesitation often creates emotional heaviness, not because life became impossible, but because your mind keeps carrying the weight of a future that never arrives. Eventually, you stop trusting your own intentions. You promise yourself change repeatedly, but nothing happens. And slowly, you begin expecting less from your future, not because you lost potential, but because repeated delay taught you that movement never comes.
At some point, you have to ask yourself an uncomfortable question. How many years of your life are you willing to sacrifice waiting for a feeling that may never arrive? Because readiness is not a destination people suddenly reach. Most of the time, people become ready only after they begin. After the first uncomfortable step, after the uncertainty, after the fear. And the longer you wait for perfect emotional certainty, the more life quietly passes in the background. The painful truth is that many people are not trapped by lack of opportunity. They are trapped by hesitation, by constantly delaying the very changes that could transform their future. And one day, that waiting becomes regret. Not because they failed, but because they spent too long standing still. If this video felt uncomfortably familiar, there's a reason for that. Subscribe to One Choice Away for more videos about psychology, self-awareness, emotional patterns, procrastination, and the quiet decisions shaping your future. And if you're beginning to recognize these patterns in yourself, keep watching. Your next step may start with the next realization.